I'm looking forward to sitting down with the legendary Rick Welts on Monday morning in Columbia, South Carolina at the University of South Carolina's Sports Events and Venues Tomorrow conference. Welts has such great experience that I'm really eager to hear his words of wisdom for these students who are starting their journey in sports business. And this is your morning Buzzcast for Friday, November 7th. I'm Abe Madkour. It was a big shakeup in the sports betting world on Thursday as ESPN made changes to its sports betting relationships. First, Penn Entertainment entered its sports betting partnership years earlier than originally planned, and then ESPN named DraftKings its sportsbook and odds provider. Both moves take effect December 1st, so it's quite a turn. Remember, ESPN and Penn Entertainment signed a 10-year deal in 2023, where ESPN got $150 million a year in exchange for rights to the ESPN Bet brand in the U.S. All that ends very, very early and continues a run of tough betting deals for Penn Entertainment. Remember, they had that deal with Barstool years ago. So now the ESPN Bet brand will be repurposed for ESPN's TV shows and articles, and now direct users to DraftKings Sportsbook for actual betting. So one prominent ESPN morning show viewer welcomed the news, and he hopes it will mean a reduction in the volume of betting-focused content on ESPN. Who was that? Well, Mark Shapiro. He is TKO Group's president. He, of course, really kind of grew up at ESPN, and he told SBJ yesterday afternoon on Thursday that he hopes this move means that viewers will not have to endure sports betting conversation infiltrating ESPN's programming in the way that it has. He obviously is not a fan. He went on to call it bad programming. He said while young sports fans are betting, they are not tuning in to ESPN for nonstop conversation about props and parlays and over-unders. In fact, he called that type of programming a total turnoff. Now, Shapiro said he hopes this new DraftKings arrangement doesn't have the same approach and same integration. Now, ESPN did not respond to Mark Shapiro's comments directly, and it's obvious that Mark Shapiro, probably close to my age, is of a different generation. Now, I am not a gambler, so I agree with Mark Shapiro, but again, we're probably not the demo they are after. I do think gambling and sports betting integration will continue into the programming, but if any morning Buzzcast listeners, if any of you have a strong point of view on this, please let me know. But the bottom line, Penn Entertainment's hope that ESPN Bet would become one of the biggest U.S. sports books fell far short of their goals and reality, and it really shows the challenges of being in this gaming space, which is dominated by two players, FanDuel and DraftKings, and it's really hard to get market share in this environment. Let's move on. The Colorado Rockies are turning to Moneyball's Paul DePodesta to head their baseball operations department. This move really surprised me, and it surprised many others, as the 52-year-old DePodesta has been in the Cleveland Browns front office since 2016, not even working in baseball. So you, of course, know him or know this character. For years, he was with the A's under GM Billy Beane, and he was portrayed by Jonah Hill in the 2011 movie Moneyball. So he had this aura or storyline around him. And remember, he did become general manager of the Dodgers in the early 2000s. He was then fired. He spent time with the Padres. He spent time with the Mets before going to Cleveland and the NFL. Now, with the Cleveland Browns, he did not make player personnel decisions. He was always behind the scenes. He continued to live in California and either worked remotely or he would commute to Ohio. For the Rockies, a dramatic move. They have had 7 straight losing seasons. They had the worst record in baseball last year, and they are traditionally not big spenders. They had the 20th ranked payroll last year. So there are a lot of changes for the Colorado Rockies. They have never been known as progressive or analytically focused, which is the calling card for Paul DePodesta. So this will be an interesting fit. In terms of the Rockies, remember, a lot of changes. Walter Monfort, who is 36 and the son of owner Dick Monfort, was elevated to executive vice president in June. So he is playing a larger role. On the business side, the Rockies are searching for a chief revenue and strategy officer. So again, a lot of changes in Denver with the Colorado Rockies, none more dramatic than Paul DePodesta leading their baseball operations. Moving on, more growth for women's volleyball as the Houston Texans are getting into the game. Yes, Lone Star Sports and Entertainment, which is a sister company of the Texans, has purchased the Love franchise in Houston. So Love Houston is now part of Love, the professional league that has 6 teams, and this is the first franchise purchase under Lone Star Sports and Entertainment, which until now has done mostly event production and marketing. So the Texans love the model about Love. Love is really based in community youth volleyball clubs, and they believe that'll go along well with a pro team. And that fits in with what the Texans want to do in the sports community of Houston. Also, the 4-month Love volleyball season kicks off in January. So this also gives the Texans a path to new fans and customers during the NFL's offseason. It's a way to remain relevant throughout the year. The Texans also claim to have one of the largest female fan bases in the NFL, and they believe Love is a way to grow that fan base. So the Texans said that Love will have its own business P&L, and the team expects to hire ahead of the business operations of the volleyball franchise. So bottom line, more growth for Love Volleyball. So the Houston franchise is now part of a pro league lineup that already includes teams in Georgia, Texas, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Utah. They're going to be in Los Angeles in 2027, and the league hopes to add at least 4 new teams in its 3rd season and be at close to 16 teams in season 5. So again, they're heading into only their 2nd season, and they continue to grow. Don't sleep on women's volleyball. Couple other quick hitters. The PWHL's newest teams do have names: the Seattle Torrent and the Vancouver Golden Eyes. Now, their branding and visuals both lean into the natural elements from the Pacific Northwest, so that's not a surprise. I do expect these 2 teams will be big, big hits. And we mentioned the NWSL's attendance numbers earlier this week, and SBJ's Austin Karp reports the league now will finish the season with viewership up 22% over last year. So while attendance was slightly down, viewership for the league this year is up more than 20%. The NWSL averages just over 214,000 viewers for each match, and that's on CBS, ION, and the Disney networks, and that is up from last year. And anytime viewership is up, that's a good story for any league. And so my takeaways from today's Buzzcast and from this week: first, the sports book business is brutal. It's a hard business, and that's evident by Penn National's big struggles to establish ESPN Bet, as they give up just a few years in and totally will reposition the brand. And that leaves ESPN to pivot and work with industry heavyweight DraftKings. But the sportsbook business, a tough business. Takeaway number 2, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Don't sleep on women's volleyball. The Houston Texans invest in Love, and Houston becomes the 6th franchise, and more growth is on the way for this volleyball league. Takeaway number 3, the big winner for this week, the San Antonio Spurs, as voters approve funding for a new arena. It is never easy to win public funding at the polls, and the Spurs did it. And my other big winner this week, you guessed it, Major League Baseball. I can't recall a bigger week for the league. people are still talking about baseball, and business around merchandise continues, and I'm sure each team is being very strategic in how they capitalize on this interest and this moment. So those are my takeaways and winners of the week. And that is your morning Buzzcast for Friday, November 7th. I'm Abe Madkour. Thanks for listening. Stay healthy. Be good to each other. I'll speak to you next week.